People who have ghosted friends permanently. Why did you do it? Story 1. I've technically done this by going okay. I'm always initiating the conversation, so now I'm going to let them message me first and then never hearing from them again. The only times I've done it on purpose were with terrible people after I came to the realization that sometimes it's better to be alone than with people that make me feel horrible. Story 2. I learned I was just a friend of convenience. Nobody wanted me around unless I was a free ATM, free tank of gas, or a free ear to, even though they did the bare minimum to act like they cared. My problems were my own. Yet I always had to be available for their weekly monthly breakdowns about the most avoidable, like saving money to pay a bill. Then it turns into bitching about something we have planned they can no longer go to, being completely unsubtle that they expect me to offer to foot the bill. Or my personal fave, lying to me about having the money to go do said thing, and then at the last minute, declare they had some unexpected expense to take care of and are now broke, throwing expectant looks my way, but disagree or get angry, or God forbid say no to something, and it's years of silence. Finally, one day I just decided to keep it that way, been silent ever since. Why care about ghosting someone when you were never really friends in the first place? Easiest decision ever. Edit my first silver ever, thanks. Edit to my second silver ever. I hate that this blew up so much because it means so many people were treated like they were disposable, and that's upsetting, but things only get better when you realize your worth. Edit my first gold. You guys are too kind. Story 3. I started hanging out with this old friend group about 3 to 4 years ago. For about a year, it was fun catching up, and doing that whole honeymoon phase of reunification, but once the cracks began to show, it was blatantly obvious that this group will just choose people to on. Once the other guy they used to do that to moved on, then they turned their sights on me. Why? Because one of the leader types of this friend group, his loser drunk ex-girlfriend, started hitting on me, and even though I made it clear that it made me uncomfortable as all, this moron thought we were hanging out in our free time or some. And OFC, like sheep, the rest just followed suit. Even though they were cool with me, it was now just a cool thing to just on me. I remember numerous times saying something, and being called insane. Meanwhile, some other dude would say the same exact thing, and they would agree with him. It was like a middle school lunch table, so dumb. Besides that, pessimistic, told secrets to loud mouths, brought me down in front of others to look less pathetic. That doesn't fly when you're in your 30s. They can have fun with their dwindling group of friends from high school and their low self-esteem. Story 4. She kept lying to me, really stupid, small and mainly harmless lies. Concert shed gone to, how many times she took her driving test, people she's dated. It's like she would forget that we'd been besties since we were 14 and we're now in our 20s, so I knew who shed dated, concerts and driving test, etc. She tried to get back in touch 5 years later, messaging my sister and other school friends on FB saying she had desperately been trying to get in touch with me. She hadn't. I still lived in the same house, had the same mobile number and email, etc. Eventually I got in touch with her and asked her to meet for coffee. Although it was lovely to see her and I genuinely missed her as we had some of the best times of our young lives together, it became clear pretty quickly that she was still a liar, but they had got bigger. Now she was saying her sister had attempted suicide and her daughter was nearly killed by a bus. I got really angry at her for telling such shitty lies like this, which she tried to deny she was, until I started asking her for details of when, where and how these things happened, and she stumbled. I walked away and haven't heard from her since, and am relieved. I don't need fake drama. Story 5. He tried to cling to me as if his mental health was my responsibility. He really just couldn't comprehend the fact that having a friend is not the same as talking to a therapist. Story 6. One of the girls in my HS group was manipulative and had narcissistic traits. She was scheming who to be friends with to gain station and popularity, organized these talking campaigns to bully some of our classmates and make them seem ridiculous. And multiple times when we hung out she would make all these bitchy remarks at how I behaved and about the things I said, not even backhandedly, though I think she was aiming to be subtle, and just sucked at it. It was ridiculously. The final nail on the coffin was when I was hanging out with a good friend of ours, my sister and this girl. And the whole night she makes these annoying comments at my behavior and interests. Once I finally told her that this is enough, and she needs to stop, she blamed me for flipping over a single small comment, while obviously my sister and one of my best friends had very clearly seen that she was using all my insecurities against me the whole night, and that I did not in fact lose it over a single comment. Some of my friends still liked her and excused her behavior, so I simply stopped inviting her to places, talking to her, and when invited somewhere together, avoided talking to her. After high school ended we didn't talk for years until she recently sent a message apologizing. Story 7. I recently moved to a new city and wanted to restart my life. I got a new email, got a new phone number, deleted all my social media, and simply lived my life anew. I can't tell you why I just decided to ghost everyone. I felt nervous, almost like something was chasing me, needed to have a real fresh start. I had tried for many years before, but it never really felt fresh. Story 8. It's funny what you'll excuse and let a friend get away with. You can let them slide due to mental issues, unhappiness in the marriage, so on, but when she lied to her husband and said the baby was his, I couldn't excuse that. I was done. Story 9. Because I found out he was verbally abusing his child and physically abusing his wife. Tried to do more for the wife and child, but she went and denied it all when social services got involved. Sadly they are still together, and he is still a drunk who hasn't changed. At that point I had to pull my family away from that and move on with life. Was my best friend since childhood, and I never knew any of it all that time. Story 10. They put MDMA in my drink without telling me, and I had a really bad night. I already have anxiety in crowds. Being that high in a club really pushed me over the edge. Never called them again. Story 11. I just don't want the commitment of friendship. It's stressful. I hate conversation and genuinely do not enjoy having friends. I have two, and we speak maybe once a week, 1 or 2 texts. That's all I need. People don't understand, even when I try to explain, so it's easier just to ghost and get it over with. Story 12. I stopped liking them and figured out that they treated me disrespectfully and were unkind to me, and I was putting up with it, just like my parents had trained me, but I didn't have to be friends with them, so I just dropped them. Oh sure, I will call you back, not. Story 13. She weirded me out one too many times trying to be more than friends, and she drank a lot. I moved out of town and didn't tell her. She went so far as to try intimidating my mother to get my address, but mom knew who she was and why I didn't tell her, so she didn't budge. This was about 1990. A couple years ago she messaged me on Facebook trying to break the ice with a question about a band I really liked when I knew her. I deleted it and blocked her, and it's been quiet since then. Story 14. I have done it several times, and it's never about them or something I have against them. It's about me not being able to maintain those relationships because I am a very introverted person, and I prefer to be alone most of the time, and it's difficult for a normally socially active person to understand that even if I tell them and explain why. 2 weeks without contact for them is an eternity. They spam call, and when that doesn't work they are contacting my parents because they're worried something has happened to me or that I'm depressed. They're trying to be good friends, but it's just taxing to go through that every time I want to be left alone for a couple of months. And it's tiresome to explain to them over and over why I want to be left alone for a while, and it's tiresome that they always take it personally, and that I always have to feel bad about it. So eventually I just don't pick up at all so that they can move on because it's bothering both me and them. Story 15. Friends for 3 years. I hired him for my small business and he bailed on a client, stranding her, then told me he'd do it again and was unemployable. We practiced music, just the two of us, for my birthday concert for friends and family. Texted he would be running late, then never showed or explained why, so I performed solo what possible. He finally emailed weeks later simply asking for more work. A good friend of mine suggested I cut him completely from my life, that he was no friend, and so I sent him a recording of Maya Ruin concert and told him we were done. Then he kept emailing me every few months for over 2 years asking for work and to let me know forgiving him would be good for my mental health. He tricked me once by calling from someone else's number. Thought it was funny that he had finally got me. Ghosting him hurts, goes against my character. I'm still not sure was the right decision, but good riddance and burn the rest. He was a lot of fun to be with, and I've not really found another friend since. Story 16. I'm a dude. He was a dude. He was a hardcore bodybuilder but about my height, just ripped. He was clearly deep in the closet, but I absolutely don't mind. I've got gay friends. I've kissed a few dudes, I've, experimented once or twice. I'm straight, but I want to preface this with I haven't a shred of anger or hatred towards gay dudes or people. Not a drop. Not ever in my life has any gay or straight person I've known ever done something remotely like this particular person did. This guy was a good friend early on. I see him at mutual friend stuff and had occasionally come over when I had all the boys over, but then he started to hit on me. At first it was harmless and I took it in good fun but tried to make it clear it wasn't going to happen, in a sort of haha I know you want it but you're never going to get it sort of way. He began escalating things, asking me to undress in front of him, trying to sneak a peek at my junk when he could, taking almost any excuse to slap or grab my like a good game, sort of way but getting more frequent and aggressive. I'd tell him to stop but he'd play it off as boy things. He'd start texting or calling me late at night, asking me to go pick him up somewhere cause he was drunk. My wife worked the midnight shift at a grocery store and I had a 2-year-old at home so I never did. He'd always get mad, accuse me of being a shitty friend, etc. Even after I explained I wasn't gonna wake a 2-year-old up to pick up my drunk buddy and to call a cab. Even before all this started and having a kid aside we were not close enough for that. He started showing up unannounced, inviting himself over to things he wasn't invited to by anyone. The touching started getting really out of hand and even others began to notice. Just straight up I'd find him standing behind me at a party like pretending to dry hump me and then make jokes like it was just a prank bro. I'd know cause he'd be literally breathing down my neck. I'd been trying to give him the brush off and told people to not invite him around or tell him we were doing something, but he just kept showing up and kept escalating his attempts to do stuff, treating me like a stripper in the back room. I'd now told him to knock it off on several occasions, angrily. Finally one day comes around where all the boys wanted to hit the beach. They were to meet at my place then carpool down. Guess who showed up? Well there he is, in tiny swim trunks and a tight top, looking like a beach day Magic Mike. I pretend like it's no big deal, put on my baggies unsexy swim clothes. Then before we were about to go I broke a glass. It was all this one corner so I began picking up the pieces. This guy got right behind me while I was bent down and began to fake hump me. Brother didn't even help me pick up the glass. Was literally pushing me. I told him to off specifically, he continued. I turned around and shoved him away and told him next time I'd smack him. I bent back down to pick up the glass pieces. He grabbed a broom and stuck the end of it down the back of my pants where the crack of my butt was. I turned around, grabbed the stick and smacked him with it across the face hard. He tried to protest but I screamed for him to get the out, that he was not my friend and if he didn't get off my property I'd call the cops. He left. I told my friends what happened and they felt horrible for me. he stopped getting invited around and I never saw him again. He tried to contact me 3 times to apologize, but I changed my phone number and we moved unrelated to a different place in the area not long after. Story 17. I realized they hated me. I was in their group for probably 15 months, but I realized that they made new group chats whenever I joined one. Their jokes were literally just hurtful statements at me that everyone would laugh at, but because I'm autistic I didn't understand what they meant until it was too late. I wasn't invited on nights out and I was the last one to know about parties. At school they abandoned me and never told me where they were going, whether it was out to get food or to another classroom where I wouldn't be. They talked about each other behind their backs and I realized they probably did the same about me. The actual group fluctuated in size, but there were 4 in particular who were the sly ones. Think Regina George from Mean Girls X. For most of the rest simply didn't care about me. I think I only stuck around because I had a minor crush on a couple of the friendly ones and I wish I'd left it a lot sooner. The limited time I had left at school was so much better without them. Story 18. She loved drama, and was generally very toxic. I'm not gonna talk to someone who won't talk to me if I genuinely feel Eve done no wrong to them. She expected me to apologize but I never did and that was that. Story 19. It was too much work on my end to continue the friendship. Our conversations became one-sided. On a call they would be nice and talk about when we would hang out next, but ended up me asking questions and including the person. However, I kept getting K or 1 to 2 word answers. I didn't give an ultimatum, just stop trying. Story 20. She had been harassing my boyfriend. We used to all be a part of the same friend group, but a couple of years ago I found out that she had been telling strangers that he was all sorts of awful things: a racist, a homophobe, a transphobe, an abuser. It very much depended on who she was talking to. I found out when I agreed to hang out with her and some of her other friends to catch up, only to find that they all immediately knew me as that ex-girlfriend. She started doing the same with our original friend group too. I woke up at 2 a.m. one night to find him sobbing at his computer because everybody was furious at him. Shed told everybody that he had suicide baited her. Even then he wanted me to stay friends with her, because he wanted me to have someone to talk to and enjoy hanging out with. The final straw was when she started doing it to my face. I just couldn't talk to her without her bad-mouthing my boyfriend, accusing him of horrible things and expecting me to go along with it like it was some sort of casual joke. Story 21. I'm mentally ill and wanted to save them from having to deal with me when I was really going through it. I've had enough experiences in the past of people ghosting me when I got too symptomatic or needed support, so it's like a preemptive thing for me now. I leave them first so they can't leave me. Story 22. Sometimes you realize that folks aren't bringing any positivity to your life, and maybe it's better to rip off the band-aid and walk away than to stick around. Story 23. I fell in love with my friend's husband. He had done nothing wrong. He was just a great guy that I clicked with. For all the same reasons I clicked with my friend, they'd clicked with each other. When I realized what had happened, I knew I had to remove myself. I am no home wrecker. Marriage is a sacred commitment. I figured I had 3 choices: tell the truth, lie, or say nothing. I worried if I told the truth, my friend would blame her husband or he'd blame himself. It would cause problems in their marriage. I didn't want to lie because morals, and also I'm bad at it. That left saying nothing, so I just blanked them. Story 24. Cause I work all the time and any free time that I do have is either spent with my family or sleeping, or just being alone, which is a rare treat. Nothing personal. Story 25. Because they are awful people and it was always me initiating conversation and trying to keep the conversation. It's amazing that by just stopping talking to them how many just didn't care. Story 26. I never knew what the psychopathy spectrum was until I was about aged 42. When I took a deep dive into that branch of mind science, I realized I was the ultimate attractor of people on the psychopathy spectrum. I had collected throughout my life a fairly deep history with several actual psychopaths. Once I learned what a psychopath's habits and tendencies were, I cleaned them all out of my life literally all at once. The amount of gaslighting that came in as a result turned comical really fast. I could write 5 books about the tantrums they threw. Story 27. I've got a good story. I had a so-called friend that left very abusive messages on my front door because they came around multiple times and I wasn't home. I was at the hospital with my mother on death's door all night long. Then my mother had to be transferred to a larger hospital, and that so-called friend was meant to be looking after my house while I was away with my mother, who was in intensive care for months, not knowing if she'd make it. My house got trashed as she moved herself back into my house, as didn't pay her electricity bill, so racked up my bills while I was away. My place was completely trashed that it took days to clean. Took months to be able to move back into my own place again when my mom was out of hospital because I had to replace towels, sheets, tea towels, etc. because they had been washed but never hang out for months and was covered in black mold. Replace dishes because they were filled with cigarette butts and some kind of liquid. The list goes on. Then when my dad kicked her out of my house, she went and told everyone the biggest bunch of lies, so lost a few friendships there too. I didn't have anything to do with her after all that. Cut to 2 years later, my mum died tragically in a house fire and could not be saved. The so-called ex-friend decided to call the fire department to across the road from my house less than half an hour after I get home from a hospital from seeing my dad in intensive care from smoke inhalation, the same night my mum had died. I know it was her because I had it investigated, but they could only charge the poor person whose house she went to use the phone for an emergency, and she matched the
description perfectly. INFJ door slammed.
Story 28. For me, it was time to grow up. Friends based entirely around stupid things I did in my youth held me back from moving forward. Mostly friends from college. Moved to a different city. Got a job that required me to travel a ton to remote places. Started a family. Also, I quit Facebook, and for some reason I was no longer friends with as many people. Story 29, I realized they weren't my friends. The fact they didn't try to get in contact afterwards, and it took them a while to realize, made me feel vindicated. Story 30, she literally described my friendship as a burden. She said that she spent a lot of her time attending to my messages and hangout time, an email or text message once or twice a week, and maybe a hangout session once a month as a burden. She then told me that I needed to think of a way to fix our friendship. If my attention is a burden, then what exactly should I be doing? What does our friendship consist of if I cannot message you or hang out with you without being made to feel guilty about it? Why is it my responsibility to fix our friendship when you're the one claiming it's broken? I didn't exactly mean to ghost her. But every reply I came up with was filled with anger and hurt, so I never sent it. It seems she'd be happier without me anyway. Story 31, more than one guy friend that absolutely could not comprehend than just because I was single at the time I was not available to them. Like how to explain to a guy that you only get to shoot your shot once. Not once a day, not once a week, not once a month to check if I've suddenly changed my mind. Why is it some guys just can't be friends with a girl without losing their minds? Story 32, they continued to behave as though they were 21, and I started to move on as I grew older, started to say no to going out more and more, and eventually we just both stopped asking each other to do things. We're in our 30s now and they still live in a rundown apartment, have the same job, and still party every night as though they are still living in 2010. Story 33, I found that the friendship was draining all of my energy, every conversation was negative. She had a victim mentality and a lot of issues that she created herself and refused to address. It became a chore to even talk to her. I know it sounds awful, but it's the truth. Story 34, mine was a spur-of-the-moment panic. I was in a really bad place mentally. Everything in my life felt like it was falling apart. I was struggling to get over my ex. I hadn't fully come to terms with the fact that my grandfather was really gone, and several other people I had leaned on for support for a long time suddenly had adult lives to live, and I couldn't let myself drag them down with me. But then one friend I had known for about 7 years at that point on the internet told me he loved me, romantically now I am, and I had come to terms with my sexuality very early on into puberty, so it wasn't him being a man that was the issue. He told me that. I panicked and logged off of AIM, only intending to clear my head for a few hours. But that quickly turned into a few days and then weeks, and now I'm sitting here thinking about it 10 years later, and I regretting ghosting him. I have no idea how to contact him anymore, either. I know now I didn't feel the same, but I can't help but feel like I hurt him, and it's one of the biggest regrets I have today. I just hope he's doing alright. Story 35, dude I was friends with for a few years. One day out of seemingly nowhere he started spewing a bunch of anti-Jew on Facebook, essentially blaming the Jews for any and every inconvenience or negative experience he or the world experiences. I unfriended him and never attempted contact again. Story 36, ugh, I wrote out a really long, pointlessly detailed message. The gist is I was and am bad at friendships, maybe due to my personality, maybe due to terrible mental health. My two close friends found better friends who actually had the capacity to care, so I ghosted because I thought it would be the best for everyone. I didn't want friends, and they found someone who did. They seemed happy, and I am okay too. Story 37, a slightly different take on the question why ghost someone rather than tell them outright that you don't want to be friends anymore, want to talk to them anymore. Because it doesn't work. It's an awful thing to tell someone and to hear. I tried it with a girl once. I hung out with her a number of times, reconnecting some years after high school, and she expected me to pay for everything we did, while already having a boyfriend. This bothered me. I tried telling her that I didn't like that, and that I didn't want to keep doing things with her where she expects me to do things for her that her boyfriend should be doing. She told me that she was just used to her guy friends paying for her. Well, I wasn't okay with that, something I had even expressed the first time I was surprised with the sole responsibility for the bill. Another thing is that when we would talk over text, I would be the only one saying anything of substance, while she would give very short, non-committal responses, haha, oh okay wow. I felt so completely used in every aspect of our interactions. She wanted me to pay for everything. She wanted me to entertain her, all while offering none of this herself. Oh, and all while having a boyfriend already. I told her that she kept expecting things from me that she should be getting from her boyfriend, and her response was that she does get these things from her boyfriend and therefore it's okay that she's expecting it from other guys as well. I didn't like this and I told her as much. Finally, I told her I didn't want to hang out anymore, to be friends in this kind of way. Well, turns out it ain't that simple. She wanted to know why, apparently missing all of the issues I had already brought up, and wanted specific examples of things she did wrong. I refused to list things off because she would just try to explain each individual instance away. I told her this and told her that it isn't something that can be solved by proving me wrong about specific things I didn't like, that it was an overall feeling I had about the friendship. She wasn't having it. At no point did she respond to any of this with okay, I understand, I'm sorry it didn't work out. She kept trying to hold on, and I honestly felt really awful about it. She wasn't a bad person, but I couldn't keep subjecting myself to what that friendship was like. And if you haven't figured it out already, I was into her at the time, so the fact that she had a boyfriend and was simultaneously treating me like a boyfriend without actually being one, I had to end it for my own good. So, what happened if she wasn't accepting me telling her that I wanted to end the friendship? Well, I ghosted her, of course. What other option was there? This was painful as well. She would still reach out, of course, and I had to not respond. She even tried reaching out again after a few months of not trying, and I still had to say nothing because I didn't want to fall right back into that same situation. It's been years now and I haven't heard from her. I still feel bad about the whole thing. It was a completely awful experience. I have never tried such a thing since, so, OP, you want to know why I ghost people? Because it's a kindness. Story 38. When she always talked badly about her other friends, I excused it because she was just venting. Then I overheard her talking about me through our airbrush's thin walls. Kinda broke my heart because she was saying it to someone she talked sadly about to me. The saying goes, if they're doing it to others, they're probably doing it to you. Rings true. I'm still sad over the demise of our 7-year friendship, but I don't think I could ever be friends with her again. Story 39. Only done it once. She was just so overwhelmingly negative. Every few minutes there was something else for her to complain about. She'd even be posting Facebook updates several times a day about how the bus was slightly late. Someone took a while to find change to pay the fare. It was raining and her umbrella wasn't holding up because of the wind. Someone at work used a bit of her coffee. Meeting up with her in person was just more of the same, but an endless barrage of minor annoyances that somehow the world conspired to do in an attempt to ruin her day. Any attempt to tell her that she was being too negative to her meant people were telling her she wasn't important and they didn't care about her problems. Shame, as she was actually quite a nice person and would try to help people. It wasn't like she only ever thought about herself, but it was just so exhausting hearing about everything going wrong all the time. Story 40. Tried to look smart, so he spammed 10 lines of something in Japanese. I rough translated it, and the result was him calling me fat. Wasn't much of a good guy. Either one of my other friends gets ignored by him for no reason while he's online. One word: toxic. Story 41. It was two friends. They were a couple, a boy and a girl. They had a personal problem with me, thought I intentionally spent more time than them with mutual friends when really we just weren't available on the same time, and I was feeling depressed and lonely, and couldn't always wait until we were all available to spend time with friends. Instead of talking to me about it, they started being really toxic at our job. The three of us worked together. Rest of the group of friends didn't. Talked about me to the others. I learned about it months later, and didn't have a chance to defend myself because, as I did not want to bother the whole group with our problems, I never talked to anyone about what they were doing to me. Organized a vacation with the whole group except me, learned about it because I had to cover most of their hours. For a week. Talked about me to other friends they do not personally know, friends I had long before I even met them. Tried to sabotage my efforts to leave my job they had already left, and knew I wanted to leave too. Also, the guy tried to abuse me after pushing me to drink a lot in a vulnerable moment. I just stopped talking to and hanging with the whole group and immediately felt a lot better. Months later, the two of them tried to talk to me as if nothing happened, commenting my stories, etc. So I blocked them everywhere. The guy is still trying to get back in my life by talking to my boyfriend like we should all play this game together someday. My boyfriend must have seen them 3 times in his life. They were never close. I still don't get why they're trying to get back in my life, and it is really stressing me out after all they have put me through during a whole year. Story 42. When they ended up being outright racist, and even admitted to themselves they were racist but still thought they were in the right, and I don't mean a sort of accidental stereotyping sort of racist, I mean a literal all black people are criminals, and are inferior to my superior whiteness kind of racist. Story 43. She was a narcissist with 0 redeeming qualities. As a rule, I now refuse to pursue friendships with women who can't be friends with other women. Women don't want to be your friend, Laura, because you use, manipulate and stab them in the back. Also, you're welcome for not reporting you to the SEC for insider trading, you dumb unt. Story 44. They weren't a real friend. Most of the people I have dropped probably didn't even notice. I'm not very good at knowing if a person is actually a friend, I guess. Story 45. I just had a slow epiphany that just because we were forced together every day didn't mean that we were friends. When we finished college, I had a slow epiphany that if we had met then we wouldn't be friends. He was a self-absorbed narcissist that always seemed to like bringing me down and letting me know how better he was than me. Never supported me or asked if I was alright. Told him that I prefer people I'd met at uni and never spoke to him since. Story 46. In my 20s, I had some issues with my tonsils that I posted about elsewhere that resulted in a 3 to 4 day hospital stay. Doctors told me the consequences could have been death. I thought that I had plenty of friends. I would go out with them all the time. The only one to call actually drive 2 hours from another city to visit was my ex-GF. After going home, doctors told me to rest for 2 weeks to get stronger. I thought about things and realized most of the time it was always me calling people to see what was going on. I decided not to call. Nobody called. Around that time Trainspotting came out. In the end I had an epiphany when he's in the room and the song Born Slippy starts as my so-called mates. From that point on I ghosted all of them. I'd infrequently get the call, hey man, where you been, like same place. I did go out with them again occasionally, but for the most part began to really despise my so-called mates. Story 47. I felt like the only thing we had in common was time. I felt like I was being dragged down by her energy, like I was winded when we'd finish our visits. I'd have to literally prepare myself for our time together. It was exhausting. She and I were best friends since before high school, but we both became very different people very quickly. Story 48. He was my only friend at the time, and because of that I just didn't see how much of an he was to me sometimes. In grade 7 he was ignoring me all day for literally no reason because we were laughing and the night before on Xbox. I was like this and told him off. We didn't talk until grade 8 after he apologized and shut was normal again. Until grade 9 when he started being in again and some we were going to different high schools next year, I knew I could cut him off completely. That summer I told him I was done with the bullshit and blocked him on everything. A couple years later he ended up reaching out to me and apologized again, and we talked for about an hour but I decided once again that we should keep going separate ways.